Shalom Aleichem. Welcome to Breslov Web Seminar Parshas Miketz. This is almost Hanukkah, but let's start with Miketz. The way it works out in the Hebrew calendar, Parshas Miketz is almost always Shabbos Hanukkah. There's a couple of times in my life I remember that Miketz came out Erev Hanukkah or just after Hanukkah, but that's very, very rare. Miketz always comes out. The Rebbe Nosson speaks about it in the Kutei Halachos, why Miketz is Parshas Hanukkah, why it's always the week of Hanukkah, and it has a lot to do with us. It has a lot to do with our understanding of what the Parsha is all about. It's a pretty rough parsha. It starts with Paro having his dreams, and it speaks about how Yosef was freed from prison and he became the viceroy of the entire land of Egypt. Egypt at that time being the highest and most sophisticated civilization in the world. All right, we'll find out how civilized they were. And then you have the meeting of Yosef and his brothers, and how they meet, and how he takes them in, and how at the end he sends them back with his goblet, and he puts them into a quandary. This is the parsha. What it has to do with Hanukkah, we'll speak about in next week's after Hanukkah. We'll speak about it. But right now, let's understand the parsha itself. Miketz starts off with Paro's dream. Paro had a dream that the lean cows swallowed up the fat cows, and that the lean stalks swallowed up the fat stalks. And it was the prophecy that as the king of the land, he was given the notation of what's going to happen to his country, that they're going to have very good years, and then they're going to have very lean years. Things are going to be rough. Rebbe Nosson explains in the Kutei Halachos that this is really the way Paro works. Paro is from the word hafra'ah, to disturb. Paro comes along every time and he tries to disturb us, knock us off course, to keep us unbalanced. We're not always with it. So we can have a good year and we think everything is great and everything is fantastic and this is the way it should be and things can go wonderful. Then all of a sudden we get knocked off course by a lean year. Something happens, right? Whether it's a family illness, whether it's a financial problem, whether it's other issues that come up in families and friends and whatnot, countries. We just had recently an election in the States where everything was imbalanced. And even though the president-elect came out to be a person named Trump, they're still fighting it. They don't want it, right? It's okay as long as it's the way they want, not the way it happened. They don't want to accept reality. That is the dream of Paro. Paro being the Yetzer Hara, Paro being the inclination that tries to knock us off course. Paro is always somebody who's trying to tell you, right, forget about your good years, right? Think only of your lean years. Think only of the years that things were difficult for you. Forget about it. That's what happened in his dream. He says, the lean cows swallowed up the fat cows. I mean, how could that be that the lean cows didn't show any gain of weight, right? It's because they forgot the good. There's good all over, and there's good in our lives, and there's tremendous good in our lives. But we just tend to forget about it. We remember the pain. We remember the suffering. We recall the difficulties. And we don't want to remember that things were good once. We don't turn to Hashem and say to Him, thank you, Hashem. Thank you for all the good that I had. Now I'm going through a rough period, but there are good years and there are rough years. Sometimes it goes good, sometimes it goes rough, right? You have to know how to live with that. So that's Paro's dream, to swallow up all the good, that there's no remembrance of anything good that happened. There's nothing good that we could recall. And we fall into depression, we fall into difficulties in just getting through life because we just can't remember any good. Yosef comes along, he's freed from prison. Yosef is somebody who was due out of prison. He never should have been there in the beginning. It was all a trumped up charges, right? But what Yosef did was tell Paro, you're going to have good years, you're going to have bad years. Take from the good and put away for the bad, so that when the lean years do come, you're going to remember you had good. Recall that, remember that, and internalize that into your life, that there's always good and there's always bad. You have to take from the good and think about it and recall it and bring it into your lean years. Save for it, right? You had something good happen to you in life, take it, put it aside, recall that this good is going to be of use later on too. And you recall later on in the rough moments, well, listen, it's not that bad. I had some good, Baruch Hashem. Thank Hashem for what I did have good. Thank Hashem for the days without pain. Thank Hashem for the days when I had a little bit money, and so on. And when we do that, then we bring some happiness and joy, and we could survive even the most terrible famine that happens. That's the beginning of the parsha. That's the way Reb Nosson looks at it. And he's telling us that we have a lot to be thankful for, and that we have a lot that we could always look into and rejoice with, and always be happy. Second part of the parsha has to do with Yosef and the brothers. It was a rough deal. Along comes Yosef, who was sold into slavery, and now he becomes the second most important ruler in Egypt. Right? He's next to Paro. He's alongside Paro. He saved the country. This civilized country, this Egyptian land, right, was saved because of Yosef. Some 100 years later, the same civilized people went and took Yosef's family and enslaved them in some of the most terrible cruelties, which we'll get to when we speak about the book of Shmos, of Exodus, the slavery and the bondage that took place in Egypt. But for the moment, this is what's called a highly civilized country. But remember, Germany was considered the greatest power of civilization at the turn of the 20th century, and they're the ones who made the Holocaust. It's nothing new. It's nothing new that a civilized country turns uncivil. And the reason for it is that we make a mistake and we think that it's really civilized. That's our problem. We think that the country is civilized. We have, Baruch Hashem, many countries today throughout the world, and they have tremendous liberties, and they're always looking out for the good of the citizen. And yet there is so much problem. Right? Last week, a truck was deliberately run into a group of some 50 people in Berlin. It managed to hurt Many of the people, some 50 people, were hurt. You have throughout America today, you have in France, where they have all these riots with the Arabs and whatnot. Civilization, that's what it's called. Yosef was sold into civilization. Our exile as a Jewish nation, we're sold into the different civilizations of the world. And we've been through all of them. We've been through Spain with the Inquisition, France with the expulsions and the public burnings of Talmud, Italy, the same thing, Germany, England, the massacres at York and so on. We've been through all the civilized countries in the world. America today too, considered the country of the world, right, whatever. We as Jews are sold into civilization. We're spread out throughout the world. We're not in our own country where there are problems with civilization too, but we're not in our own country that we can govern according to the laws of Torah, where we can govern according to the laws of real civilization. Rather, it's all man-made. All the laws that you have in all the countries are man-made solutions. Yosef was sold into slavery. The brothers made a mistake. The brothers thought that Yosef was off the wall. He was off the derech. He was not doing the right thing. Yosef deserved punishment, and they sold him into slavery. Right? At least there he won't be able to cause the damage that he's predicting and whatnot. On the other hand, we see that Yosef rose above it all. Yosef represents the true tzaddik. Yosef represents the true tzaddikim, the true leaders of Klal Yisrael, those who are really, really involved with trying to help all of the Jewish nation. It's not a self-interest group. It's not a group that says we're looking out only for ourselves. We're looking at only for what we think. We know that people are different. We know there are 12 tribes. There were 10 tribes involved in the sale of Yosef. 9, 10, you have different opinions in Rashi and whatnot. But each one has a different opinion. But Yosef was the true tzaddik. They were all tzaddikim. They're all righteous. And they're all right. And they all have beautiful thoughts of how to help humanity. But it's all self-made. It's all man-made. All the laws of the countries, all the different situations that come up, almost all of it is manufactured by man, by the human being, with his thoughts of what is right and what is wrong. The Pasha, like Hanuka, is telling us that you have to sometimes really fight for your rights. And if it involves killing other human beings, those who are oppressors, like ISIS, you have to do that, right? Yosef, when he met his brothers, he worked with them in a strange manner. What did he do? He drew them close. You're my friends, you're my brothers. And he helped them. And he let them realize certain things were not the way they thought. Certain things were not. The Medrash tells us that when the brothers went down to Egypt, they each one went through a different gate. Each one entered through a different gate in the city. And Yosef was brought the names of the people who came to visit the country. Like the State Department, like the U.S. passport or so on, you have to check out who's coming into the country. Do you have a visa, whatnot? So he saw the lists. There's Reuven ben Yaakov came through gate A. Gate B came Shimon. Gate 3 came Levi, and so on. He checks them all out. He sees these are 10 brothers, and yet they came through different gates. Why? And the Medrash tells that they went through different gates so that they're going to see and try and find a different outlook of what Egypt was all about. Maybe they'll be able to find Yosef. Maybe, after all, maybe they made a mistake with selling their brother. Maybe they made a mistake not recognizing the greatness of the tzaddik. and maybe they'll be able to find him and redeem him. So each one went through a different gate. Also that they were all very powerful people. They were very astounding people. And they looked proud and strong and representative of something different than what the Egyptians. And you see this when they say, well, where's the Jew? The Jew is always the Jew. The Jew, where is he? What is he? Why is he always standing out among others? Why? And he always was. Why? Because they have qualities that civilization does not have. And they all look forward to try and make life better. So they're all afraid of the Jew. And because of that, they question, they challenge, they become very frustrating, they put stumbling blocks on our way and whatnot. Our problem is we have to look for Yosef. The brothers were looking, and Yosef confronted them. He brought them all together. He says, what are you doing out there? He says, well, we had a brother, and we lost him. We had a tzaddik. We had somebody to lead us, and we don't have it now, and we need that now. And when that happened, Yosef, the pasuk says, he cried. He cried, and then he went out, and he said, let's sit together, and they spoke, and whatever. And that is really perhaps the most important lesson before we hit Hanukkah of what's the idea of the tzaddik. What is the idea? You have to seek him. You have to go, everyone tries a different path. Right? Every path is different. Every Jew is different. And we all have to understand that. We have to recognize the greatness of our brethren. We have to recognize the powers and strengths of our brethren, and we still have to work together. We still have to bring that together. If we can, then Be'ezah Hashem, we're going to be able to find the tzaddik, we're going to be able to find Yosef, and we're going to be able to make a redemption. And that's what happened in next week's Parsha Vayigash. You should all have a good Shabbos and a good week. And may Hashem bless us all, that we look for unity, we look for strength, and we look for the good, and we don't let ourselves get swallowed up, not by Paro, not by the civilizations that surround us, where we think that they're in charge. They're not. It's Hashem who's in charge. It's how we bring Hashem into our lives that we're going to see the 7 fat years, the 7 good years. We're going to see good for everybody. Omein v'yomein.